I almost knocked on her door whenever I saw her
701.
car there. Lisa!
You want a carpool? In other words, let's get going.
So we've got a pretty big agenda tonight, but I want to make sure this is as official as possible. So my recommendation is that we would do the vote for the chair first and allow the chair to take over the meeting. And then I'd make a recommendation to the incoming chair to bump the corridor study up so they can do their study, and then we can go through the rest of the agenda, getting to the vice chair after, because obviously we don't need a vice chair for today's meeting, and getting to the Deutsche West Commission chair. So if there are no concerns with that, even before we do the minutes and everything else, we're calling the meeting to order. And item 1 is 5A. So we're going to discuss and consider designate a chair for the Parks and Rec Commission, and then we'll come back and redo the second half later on. So, welcome. Thanks for everyone for coming. And please take this over so I don't have to run this meeting anymore.
All right.
Anybody have someone they'd like to nominate? Or ask a question for someone new on what the expectations would be of the chair, or?
Yep, that's a good
I
question.
have somebody I want to nominate.
Okay.
I would like to nominate Lisa.
Is there anybody else? Anybody would like to
No.
nominate?
Oh, no, they're not gonna say anything.
They might.
You're so good at it.
Oh, you're full of it. Thank you.
So
Anybody
Lisa's been
else?
nominated. Is anybody else
Second.
interested?
Second.
Oh, second.
Third.
There you go.
I feel like I'm being railroaded.
Yeah, I think you got bamboozled a little bit.
Yep, that'll teach me to show up a minute late. Did y'all all decide this before I showed up? Whoever's the latest one here.
Right? Take a chair.
Is there any other nomination?
Anyone? Anyone? Anyone?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, cool. We'll take it to a vote. Everyone in favor of Lisa being the chair again? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Sweet. Okay, your meeting now.
Okay. Still on 5A, aren't you? Nope, we're gonna go back to vice chair later on.
Okay.
Where is corridor study? So that's 4B?
Yeah.
Okay, discussion regarding the FM 685 corridor study. Mr. Shane. Or do we have someone else? You want me to go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay, Emily.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission. For those of you who I think I might have met everybody, but I'm Emily Barone, the Assistant City Manager, and I'm the project manager for this portion of the FM 685 corridor study. So tonight we wanted to bring this forward to you all to just discuss the study and get your feedback on our draft report prior to taking it to council for approval. The FM 685 corridor study is a study that was approved as part of the 2020 bond package, and we're looking for really the long-term functionality of the 685 corridor. And so it studies just south of Wells Branch to our city limits, all the way north to 130. So it covers the portion that's known as Dessaw to Pecan, which is where it transitions to FM 685. We've been through quite a year of public engagement, and there's a lot of trails and parks connections to this corridor. So we're kind of on our roadshow of commissions to make sure that we have considered all of the things that we need to before going into the next step. Joining me tonight is Kelly Reese. She's with Kimley Horn. They have been our consultant on this project, and I will let her take it from here.
Yeah. So like Emily said, my name's Kelly Reese. I've been the deputy project manager on this project. Looking at what we're going to go over today, if we could advance a slide. We're going to just go over, Emily already gave a great background of the project, but just a little bit more, talk about the preferred concept that we came up with and how it relates to parks and trails, and then ask any questions. On the next slide, for some project background. Like Emily mentioned, this was a bond-approved proposition as part of an overall larger transportation bond. The FM 685 project is a study to make sure that we first study the corridor and then eventually build it out to an ultimate completion. We are looking for a long-term solution, something that will still be good 20 years from now as the city grows and traffic grows, And so we wanted to make sure that we had capacity for people and cars. We wanted to make sure that people could get around easier and safer. And we wanted to make sure that there's new access for pedestrians and bicycles as they try to get up and down and around the corridor. So going on, the project that was approved within the bond covers the first 4 phases of the development. First is the corridor study, which is what we're wrapping up now. Going into this year, we're going to look at a little more detailed schematic design and all the environmental concerns that we'll need to. Looking forward from that, we're going to get into the very detailed design, the actual plans and specifications that will get sent for construction. And that's where we're currently funded through with the transportation bond. We'll still at some point be needing to find sources for construction funding, but that will come down the line. And we're looking at multiple ways to find that funding.
And this, I would just note that this level of effort to get to that point is to ensure that our project is basically shelf-ready for federal funding. And so we're going through all of these efforts so that when a federal call for funding becomes available, we have a project ready to roll.
Just looking at the concept we ended up going with, we looked at several different alternatives over the course of the study, and the one that we ended up going with was something called an urban boulevard. Very dense and commercial heavy, very walkable and bikeable and green and livable. This ended up having a 6-lane road section with 11-foot lanes to kind of narrow it up so that we'd have more space in the right-of-way for pedestrians and bicycles. We're looking at reducing the speed along the corridor, which is something we're still coordinating with TxDOT since they own much of the corridor. We're hoping to get it down to 40 miles an hour. A lot of dense commercial development and mixed-use development with homes along the way. Still making sure that everything's wide enough to accommodate large-scale trucks, but also accommodate pedestrians and bicycles off street on either side of the corridor on 10-foot paths, so that there's room to pass each other and to bike and have a nice walkable area. Also looking to improve the aesthetics of the corridor with visual treatment, street art, trees, greenery, as well as illumination along the full way, and making sure that we have room for transit if there's a bus route or something like that wants to come through the corridor in the future. Those outer lanes are still wide enough to accommodate those kinds of vehicles. Looking at some of the intersections, it's a little small at this scale, but essentially green is median and greenery, orange is path. At 130 in Coppermine, we're leaving the bridge largely as is, just enhancing the width of the bridge to help serve more vehicles and get people through. At Town Center Drive, again, we're leaving it largely the same and just adding a whole bunch of sidewalk connection and optimizing the signal there. At Pflugerville Parkway, we're putting in...
Just at Town Center, just for those of you who probably visit Stonehill a lot, that becomes a dual left
Yes.
into Stonehill from 685.
Yeah, thank you. At Pflugerville Parkway, we're looking to do an innovative intersection there, and also there's a whole bunch of unusable, in terms of development, land just north of the intersection that we're looking at potentially making into a placemaking area or a park. Also, since the intersection is innovative, a little less intuitive to drivers and pedestrians, we've added a path option up and around the intersection if people want to avoid it and just take a more leisurely stroll. But you could also just pass straight through the intersection as normal along the boundary of the road. At the proposed future Main Street connection near the HEB along 685, we're proposing a tie-in as well as path to and from that intersection. At Pecan Street, we're looking at taking Pecan up and over 685 to help reduce some of the stop-and-go traffic there and really connect to some of the existing trails in the area, like the, I can't pronounce it, but the Gilliland Creek Trail.
Should say it fast.
And then at Wells Branch, we're really keeping it a traditional intersection, but beefing it up with turn lanes, especially a southbound right turn lane onto Wells Branch from 685, and adding trail connections through there as well. All the other intersections along the corridor, we're going to optimize out with signals, including adding a couple of signals at Applewood and new connections, but they weren't exciting enough to put on a slide.
And the Applewood intersections, the signal there, we just found out from TxDOT a couple weeks ago, has already been funded by TxDOT. And so we expect that intersection will be signalized by the end of '24.
What trails would it connect to at Wells Branch? Things that don't exist yet?
According to the trail map, the sidewalk along Wells Branch is the Wells Branch Park Trail.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? So, they're gonna have the intersection or the light at Pecan, a light at Main Street, future Main Street, and then a light at Applewood. So 3 lights at that close proximity? Okay.
But if Pecan's going up
One's
and
an
over.
an underpass, right, yeah.
It'll be similar.
That's an
Pecan goes up and over, but you can still go under the intersection, the diamond configuration, like at 130,
Okay,
where you can pass through kind of the dual intersections under the bridge.
okay.
So, this may not be a question to ask now, but I'm just curious because the map, how does this impact the businesses along 685?
So there's always been a median along 685, and so that'll stay in place. But with the new connections, we're hoping to make sure that people can take back roads as well as the existing normal paths to businesses. And so we're hoping it actually increases connectivity to them.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't think I worded my question correctly. Is the road going to expand, or are we taking the existing road and turning it into 6 lanes? And if expansion, how does the expansion affect the businesses?
The road is getting wider. Along most of the corridor, there's already public right-of-way that we're staying within. There's a couple of spots, especially between kind of the dense development area between Pflugerville Parkway and Finning, that right-of-way is a little bit tight, and we'll have to go in and get some. But for the most part, it never goes up to the building of a business, and the city owns the right-of-way for most of the corridor.
Okay.
Have y'all run simulations on a decrease in traffic speed, extra lanes, and sort of impact? I know it's already a pretty busy area.
We did, this was one of a couple of alternatives, and so we ran one with the lower speed and then one with higher speed, and showed that with the lower speed, people were more likely to take alternative routes. 130 being one of them. The city's also proposing several new connections that aren't part of this study, but parallel to the route, or to 685, and so we're showing that people would kind of get off 685 and use some of the other options, and that all of these intersections would operate at the kind of industry standard level service in terms of how much delay the average person experiences along the route.
It really becomes kind of a driver to attracting drivers to kind of that's local versus kind of the commuter traffic that 685 sees today, where you're just kind of going through. And in this urban concept, what Kelly's describing, it kind of go to alternate paths. The model showed that people would go to maybe the frontage road of 130 or utilize the future Finning Lane or Old Austin Hutto kind of connections to the corridor, and so that allows for more access and kind of easier movement through the corridor over time.
No, that's fantastic. I mean, obviously this road doesn't stop at Wells Branch, right? I think it's actually a pretty popular commuting corridor,
Yeah.
as well as large trucks, things like that. So the more we can actually cut that down, probably the better.
So it'll just be a change in
This
the.
looks great for cars, but it looks terrible for bikes and pedestrians.
Better than it is now. I'm a
Yeah.
biker and I wouldn't, you couldn't pay me enough to bike on
Well, I
685.
wouldn't want to bike right next to a 6-lane road.
That's better than no bike getting killed in the street as it is. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree
Yeah,
with you. Yes,
yeah.
it's not great, but it's better than it is
yeah.
now.
I
and
kind
that's
of
a-
like
that's
the
a- as a
paths that are
bicyclist-
off.
And as a
The road.
bicyclist, that is a huge gap. I bike quite a bit
Yeah.
around the city. There's a huge gap that the only place I will cross is on the sidewalk at Pflugerville Parkway.
It looked like on the
Because-
image that there was a protection of the bike lane to keep cars from coming over, so
It's
It's
that.
just going to be the constant driveways is
Yeah.
the problem, but that's
Yeah.
biking.
Yeah, so that gives a little bit of protection.
So I think part of me would just get rid of that sidewalk if there was another route for bikes and make that a greenway, because we're going to be getting rid of trees and stuff if you're taking some of the right of way along that path between Fenwick and Pflugerville.
So I think most of the right-of-way needs are around the intersections.
Okay.
That's where we saw the bulk of it. Over time with development and the benefit of kind of the long-term master transportation planning is that as developments come, even though we haven't been ready for that 685 expansion, is that we've been able to preserve that right-of-way for the ultimate ideal of 6 lanes. And so in this what we're calling the proposed concept, we looked at a variety of scenarios, one of which, really kind of pushed those sidewalks up to the street. And we know that didn't measure well on our safety issue.
Right.
Also, typically, we'd see a 6-foot sidewalk on one side and a 10-foot trail on the other. In this concept, it's 10-foot trail on both sides
Okay.
to accommodate and make it more comfortable for a bicyclist as well as pedestrians, and while still allowing for access to the businesses along the corridor. We wouldn't want to remove that opportunity from that because people will then use it and then it becomes even more unsafe.
So the question though to me is if you're now moving it over, in my mind, there are some very narrow strips along there with trees in them now. Will they go?
I mean, I think there's the potential for that, but also, Kelly, I don't remember if we included the video in this presentation, but,
We did, yeah.
okay. Also, our
Okay.
goal is to look at putting trees down the median in the middle.
Can we
And so-
add trees?
Right, so I know that y'all have talked about trees a lot, and so getting trees down that center median also makes it a more comfortable, and also from a visual perspective, you slow down, and so trees are included there, and then I imagine that along those paths, there would be other opportunities for additional green or gateway and streetscaping to allow for that.
And my last question for now, the median between Pecan and Wells Branch, is that affected at all?
As far as the width of it goes,
It should be standard 14 feet along. I don't remember exactly how wide that one is.
I don't
But that's
either.
more than a lane width. And
Okay.
So
Yeah.
it'll still
Yeah.
be a nice wide
Okay.
median.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Because I live along there.
I thought we were fundamentally opposed to putting trees in the middle because of the hardship of keeping them watered, the challenge of that.
we've been looking more at, because of also the benefit of trees and landscaping, different ways to install or construct roadways to allow for, I think it's the seepage that we've had concerns with when you put in irrigation into the actual infrastructure that's caused in challenges for the pavement and things like that. And so I think there are creative ways, the more inventive our engineers get in looking at that, that we're able to have more flexibility with putting landscaping in the medians.
Okay. I mean, I'm all for it, but I know that there's been a lot of concern.
You're absolutely right. Historically, that has been a huge challenge, and but I think we see the benefit, and we need to look for creative ways to get those areas landscaped.
Okay.
Yeah, I live on Applewood, and just even walking to HEB is pretty brutal. So like,
That's like
you hit on my
Frogger.
like contiguous sidewalk would be nice.
I'll up you.
Pedestrian crossings,
I'll
bike
up,
lanes.
I'll up you one. I walk from Hendrickson High School over to Town Center and
Oh my
to the shopping
gosh.
center occasionally. That is just,
Yeah.
not only is there no sidewalk, you have to run across the streets
Yeah, this is great stuff.
with 3 dogs attached to me.
Can I ask one more question? So you mentioned that the trees will help with like visually people slowing down and you're gonna decrease the posted speed. Is there anything else to help people slow down or to force people to slow down?
The lane widths.
Part of it.
Lane widths
yeah.
will help
Right,
with that?
narrower. Yeah.
Light to it, the extra light Applewood, I bet would slow down things.
I thought that was
Yeah, it's
interesting when you said
Yeah.
trees.
It's
help.
a
That makes
visual
sense.
impact.
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
make sense, but I hadn't thought of it.
Yeah.
What is the normal lane width?
Here, I think we have
12
12
foot
feet.
standard.
And what is, if you know, what is City of Austin doing? Because the one thing that I hate about the City of Austin, there are several, but the one thing, this one particular thing, is that in order to put in bike lanes, they've taken the existing lanes that they had and made them so small that when you drive in them, it's like, please don't hit me, please don't hit me, please don't hit me.
Sure. So,
And that's what concerns me about making them smaller.
so that came up at the planning commission as well, that same idea, and I think it was around 45th Street, and they've actually gone in some places to 9-foot lanes. If you think about a 9-foot lane, that's really more like a parking space.
Yeah.
versus these are 11-foot lanes. So you still have the opportunity to move and feel comfortable, but it's not so vast that you're like, I've got plenty of space and I can go faster speed.
Do we know what the lanes
It's
are
not
there
first
now?
class, it's business class.
They're
The li-
largely
they're
12 and
big.
12 and a half feet.
No, we're
Only
going,
about two
okay.
tires.
To 11.
That's
Really?
Because of that, because they put in the bike lane and then
They just, right,
they just made everything smaller. They put in the bike lane, they put in concrete median. Somebody did this. Instinctively, I did that. I hit the side and blew out both tires.
Y'all want to re-vote on chair?
I'm just saying, that's my concern when I see a reduced lane width. I
Right.
have an Expedition. I have 3 dogs.
Yeah.
I don't drive a teeny tiny car.
right, right.
My problem, I know, but I have to be concerned about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Curious question, on a project like this, median, super small strip, but is that parks and rec land? Like, do you get to pick the trees for that, Shane?
They'll probably go with our 7 to 8 species that we like to,
Yeah.
they'll go with native.
Is it y'all's responsibility then to maintain that
So
area?
streets have a right-of-way area,
Okay.
a team that does most of our right-of-way.
And I think to our benefit, hopefully soon, we'll be getting a forester, which will be a great benefit when we're trying to landscape all public, whether it's
under
parks
managed, yeah.
or streets.
Yeah, that
To help us
forest will work
choose
for the whole
those,
city, yeah.
those species that go there.
Just post it online, so if anybody's interested.
Please share. Like and subscribe. All
I
right.
think we got just a couple more slides.
All right, looking again at the gaps, the colors on this map aren't quite as good from a distance, but so on the map you have along 685, the green is existing places where sidewalk is, the orange is places that it does not exist today that we would go through and make sure that does exist in the future. The blue is parallel trails and shows some places that we connect to trails that didn't used to have a connection from 685. And then there's 2 green splotches along the corridor, one up near 130, or between 130 and Pflugerville Parkway, and then one between Old Austin Hutto and Pecan Street. Those were specifically called out in the Transportation Master Plan as being high priority connections to get sidewalk in, and so we're happy to be able to help those get connected with this project.
I'm surprised a Hendrickson High School student hasn't been killed, frankly.
They're so quick.
It must be really fast.
This is very similar as before, it just kind of pops out the trails and sidewalk connections in white. A lot of connections near Wells Branch and Pecan Street to existing trails that used to have just a couple 100 feet of disconnect, and now you can actually get from the trail to the corridor. Looking at costs and benefits of the corridor, a lot of these are in vehicle costs. The cost that we're looking at does not include right-of-way or utility relocations, which are going to be a big cost. But just for the construction, we're looking at $127 million. That's almost evenly split between the intersection improvements and then the roadway widening itself, along with the sidewalk, path, illumination, everything that runs along the corridor. The benefits over a 20-year period, we're looking to be pretty substantial. There's quite a lot in safety benefits due to property damage and welfare of people, reducing out those collisions with the safety improvements of the corridor. We're looking at over $1 billion in delay time saved, assuming that a person has a personal $30 an hour value of their time. We're looking that it comes out to over 20 years, over $1 billion saved across the community. And then $500 million in fuel savings if you call a gallon of gas $3.50, which hopefully it still is that way in 20 years. But still quite substantial benefits there.
And that,
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna ask for utility relocation, has there been any discussion on if that's just gonna be the movement of utilities, or is there a consideration for underground utilities to help with?
It's just the movement of utilities for the
Okay.
infrastructure needed to put the road in. The undergrounding would be great, but this cost doesn't include that.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't include any of it, yeah.
And this cost is also, I mean, I always want to be mindful to our taxpayers that we're looking at a variety of ways to fund projects, especially projects that could, when you see that kind of price tag at $126.7 million, and why it's so key for us to make sure the project's ready for any federal dollars that we might be eligible for.
For some strange reason, there's a sudden renewed interest in underground utilities. I don't know.
All right, and then this is the last slide that we have. This is a drive-through of, or a virtual drive-through of what we're proposing for the corridor.
Don't pay attention to the landscaping, though. It looks like a desert scene, I think, in here, but
So that's,
Generally runs from the south to the north. And like Emily said, we did not show the landscaping, but just more of the road layout and the sidewalks. Willows Branch is more of a traditional intersection with the beefed up turn lanes, dual lefts and rights everywhere. These are new connections to some of the neighborhoods between Willows Branch and Pecan. One at Olympic and one at Oxford. Going up to Pecan Street, Pecan will pass over the top of 685, but still down at ground level. There'll be pedestrian crossings. We're looking at doing some artistic things with the bridge, so it feels like a nice space to walk and make sure it's lighted.
and there you can kind of see like what a tree-lined median would look like there.
This is Pflugerville Parkway with a large swath of what we're looking to maybe place make with a new park just north of the intersection.
Is that gonna be a dog park or just regular park?
I didn't ask you. We've learned to ask for you.
Money can exchange hands.
That's a displaced left turn? Is
Yes.
it? Okay. So similar to what we have at Pecan, but different?
Similar but different. The one at Pecan is space limited with the bridge, and so there's some things that that intersection would be able to do that would make it more intuitive to drive. I know one of the problems with one of the issues that people have with the Pecan intersection as it is today is that if you're trying to make a northbound or southbound right, you have to cross a lane of traffic instead of hug the curb like you're used to. This one wouldn't have that space constraint, and so you just hug the curb. It'd feel like a totally normal right turn. Really, the only thing that feels different about driving it is you get switched over for the left turn, and worst case, you miss your left instead of you get into oncoming traffic. And so
It's, it'll be like if you've been to Cedar Park at Parmer and 1431 or Parmer/Ronald Reagan, it's the same concept as that intersection. So if you want a local example to drive through that, that's what that looks like.
people now, but you just changed that intersection 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we figured we would hear that, and that, you know, our goal with that was the short-term improvements. We have seen safety improvements, reducing crashes and things like that at that intersection. But right, it'll only last us about 10 years, and so I think we went through what 8-ish scenarios with every intersection, and that was one for Pecan. And in the long term, it didn't pan out for that, and so that's why the bridge came into
Oh, I like
consideration.
this.
so I assume it stops at the north end where it does because it's TxDOT land once it becomes access roads.
So I know you showed sidewalks going on Desalt 685 under Pecan. Are there also walks on that bridge going over? Or so if I'm just going east and west?
there's sidewalk going east and west.
Yeah.
They're not on the bridge. They're down at ground level.
Oh, okay.
But you'll be able to go north, south, and east,
Okay.
west.
And then still maintain the trail connections
Yes.
that are there today.
Yeah.
Can you go back slide to the URL that we had?
Oh, yeah.
Here.
I mean, maybe Shane can.
Oh, I guess it was at the end of the video.
Well, anybody got a joke?
There you go.
Oh, perfect.
I know this project is an offshoot of the corridor study, but the Main Street extension that's going to pass over Railroad, is there anything in the study that involves the possible improvements needed for Pecan and Railroad with that additional traffic from having Main Street extension there?
It did not take in, this study did not look at Pecan.
Did not look
Railroad.
at that. Okay. Great. Sorry, I was gonna ask another question. Is, in the study, is there a list of kind of like the priorities of each project as funding becomes available, of kind of what comes first, second, third?
We
The
started
phases?
looking at that.
Yeah.
We have not settled on anything yet, but as it continues to progress toward construction, we're gonna be trying to figure out what makes sense to come first.
Prioritize.
Um,
Okay. But the corridor study doesn't have that priority.
This
Not
just
yet.
says, this is what's needed, and then we'll get through kind of that next kind of design pieces. It'll help us to better say what's best to construct together or apart, or what can be standalone during the next probably 18 months.
Okay, great.
I think that's all that we had, unless anyone has any more questions.
No, I'm excited about all the walkways, because it's scary right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
And then
Oh, sorry, one last question. When are you all gonna go to the city for approval? You mentioned that you're gonna
June.
go.
you know, them,
The 28th.
I think they're putting up gymnastics.
Oh, of this month. Oh, great, thanks.
By the way, it's a mighty pretty floor over there.
Oh, appreciate that. Pickleballers are very excited. And others.
All right, are we going to 2?
Yeah.
Okay, citizens' communication. The commission welcomes comment on Parks and Recreation items. Public comment that is made on an item that is not on the published agenda will only be heard by the commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and will be asked to state his or her name and address for the public record. Do we have anybody who would like to speak?
We didn't have anybody reach out ahead of time. I don't know if anybody's here for public comment. Nope.
All right. Item 3A, approval of the minutes. Discuss and consider action to approve the minutes from the Parks and Recreation Commission meeting on January 19th, 2023. Did everybody get a chance to read them? Any,
Uh-oh. Jude locked himself out.
any comments, corrections? All right, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Carol. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Amy. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, motion passes. Discuss only, 4A. Director's updates including project status report, programming, and upcoming special events. Shane, take it
Good
away.
evening, Chair and Commission. So, update for the month. So, obviously, we've had a winter storm since the last time we saw y'all. Hopefully, everyone came through that safely. As far as our department and how it affected us, obviously, it affected Park Ops and Rec a little differently. Rec, all of our facilities were able to stand up and function pretty quickly after with minor pipe or issues. For Park Ops, it's going to take weeks to recover. I was telling, we had a PF 101 recently, and I said, the storm's over. Public Works, for the most part, other than some tree limbs back, all the other, police and other folks are back to normal operations. It'll still be another month or two before Parks has recovered completely, just because of tree damage, et cetera. So we've been focusing on public safety, park safety, participant safety. We have a lot of trees that, what are they calling the storm? Arborgeddon? Arborgeddon.
Oh my God.
So,
That's perfect.
2 years ago, Uri really affected the trees in Central Texas. And we were told for the next year, both from the Texas Forestry Service and Texas Parks and Wildlife, to let those trees recover, that they would never recover 100%. But to evaluate them after a year, and some of them you're going to get 70% canopy, some you're going to get 80, and if they're not, what you'd consider a trash tree, if that provided good value, keep them. If they were safety or risk, remove them. We were doing some rough math on the amount of trees. We think the amount of tree limbs we have if you look at how much tree canopy we have in the city, we were using Austin as a comparative guide. They have 33 million trees. They have 30% tree canopy. So we extrapolated that and we did it to our system. So we took 92% off that number and we got to 250, 300,000 trees. that we potentially have in our city, and then an 8%, at an 8% canopy versus Austin's 30%. And then the city itself being one of the largest landowners in the city, that's still a lot of trees for us, but it's a lot of trees for everyone. But looking at the numbers of how much we speculate the average tree has for each limb, or for each tree, for how many limbs it has on a tree, we still believe there could be upward to 3 million limbs in Pflugerville itself. You know, and if you drive by the Mocan, you'll believe that to be an accurate statement. So a lot of limb issues, a lot of tree issues. You saw a lot of tree damage, and the trees recovered from Uri, but they didn't recover 100%. And I think if this storm had come 7 years after Uri, I think our trees would have held up stronger. But to be quite honest, they never fully recovered. Obviously, we knew that there would be a percentage of their canopy, their growth, less than what they would operate at 100%. And then this ice storm happened, and which is what led to Arborgeddon. It really did affect trees more than almost anything else. And so staff has been working on what they call widowmakers first, which is detached limbs in the top of trees where wind blows or something happens and that tree shakes loose and falls straight down and hits someone. And we started out with over 250 of those in the park system, just in the active play areas. We have a lot of trees in our forestry side that no one will be walking in and out, a lot of undeveloped parkland, but we have a lot of trees that cover, like Pfluger Park, for example. Anyone that's tried to walk Pfluger Park, you'll see how much damage we've had there. And there's a lot of trees that kids would be playing in around, you know, running under. And so there was a huge concern for us. We shut down Pfluger Park. It just opened today. So it's been shut down since the storm, trying to get that park safe. We shut down all restrooms and water fountains going into the storm. And then they did not open up immediately. And I know there were some from the public that were frustrated with us. But at that moment, you know, I've got a crew getting the ball fields ready for the incoming spring season. So other than that crew, we've got a couple crews. Do you want them taking care of those widowmakers, or do you want us to open up restrooms for a park that might still be closed? And so we erred on the side of safety, tried to address all the tree issues that we could. And by addressing those detached limbs at the top of trees, it's literally a lift. So they're driving out, getting a guy up, going up and trying to, you know, do the maintenance needed, whether it's pull it or cut it down, and then you lower that lift and you drive to the next tree. So it's a very manual process, yeah. So there have been some park closures, both due to safety, and at one point Finnick was a dumping site, and then it became, we shut it down as an official dumping site, and for a little bit it was still an unofficial dumping site, so we shut it back down again, make sure no one else came in there, and we had about a day's worth of work in Finnick from some trees that had been dumped after we had shut it. So our staff are still manning limb drop-off sites as well. We're working split shift with Public Works to continue to offer the public an opportunity to dump both the Mocan and the couple different recycling sites. And then this lower section here is Public Works as well. But they're doing residential and right-of-way limb pickup. They have a couple different vendors that they're using to work through the neighborhoods, and some neighborhoods have been hit and some neighborhoods have not yet been hit, but the plan is for them to all be hit. Evan, the operations director, made a presentation to council Tuesday night, and they're extending services and limb pickups and everything else to get through all the needs that the city is going to have. Recycling center is handling a huge load, and then overall in his presentation to council, he said there were 7,360 cubic yards to date of just limbs and debris that were collected from the storm. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know how to put that in context. So the little man, a cubic yard is 3 by 3 by 3. So you can see what 250 cubic yards looks like compared to a human, what 500, what 1,000. So take that big Rubik's Cube over on the right, and 7 of them is what we've collected plus. Also somewhere said the largest blimp, Goodyear blimp, was 7,500. So kind of like one of those big old Goodyear blimps. So Public Works staff, Park Ops staff are still right in the middle of recovery for sure, not out of it yet, and they're doing a great job, I think, making sure restrooms are still clean now and all the things that you expect out of your park system, but still also manning shifts, pulling. We've cut a lot of trees. We've got a lot of stacks of trees. We're chipping trees now. Now that we've got a chipper, we're trying to get a couple more chippers. Everyone in the state, we were calling We were calling the Valley, we were calling West Texas, we were calling other states, see if we could get a chipper. I was gonna send someone out there, we were gonna get some chippers before someone else did, but, all the, landscaping companies had, they had admin assistants that were dialing as well, so.
We're not discussing now, but I certainly would like to say thank you to you and the crews and everybody else who's been involved.
I appreciate that.
I've been walking up and down the trail on Wellston Hutto, and there's still one or two that I'm leery of.
Yeah.
But I feel very safe going along there.
Sure. I appreciate that. We still have a plan to do some secondary cuts, a secondary evaluation, and what we would call a boutique style cut as well, for like our pecan, our stately pecan tree that's behind the Gillen Creek pool. You know, we almost want a professional service to handle some of that, and so we're doing some real maintenance cuts and trying to make sure everyone is safe as possible, but there will hopefully be some more beautification cuts as we're trying to tree limb up and tree limb out and give what has survived a chance to really grow the best it can. I think we are gonna see a reduced tree canopy for a while. Fred, one of our Fred, right there, there's Fred. He has started a little tree farm from trees that we got donated from one of our Arbor Day events, and we've been handing them out. He's been trying to grow them up and hand them out, and that storm hit, and he had them. I wouldn't have been surprised if he had laid with them all and just bought them all. He did everything he could to keep those trees safe and warm in a greenhouse, keeping them. So we're already trying to get the next generation of trees out into the hands of the public. So we're doing everything we can do.
I'm glad it wasn't any colder.
That's right. That's right. The rest of the director's report, we've got Dad and Daughter Dance coming up this weekend. We got an escape room in a box coming up soon. Hang out in a park, which is just a family day that we're going to have a lot of fun games out in the park system. The youth are going to Mammoth National Monument in Waco. And then the adults, we're having a parents' night out for them to be able to drop kids off right before the spring break. So they have a week with their kids. We're going to give them one night without them. Seniors are going on a full tour of places. They're getting a movie at the rec center. They're going around Rock and Liberty Barbecue and Jack Allen's rest of this month, and then they're going to Smithville. They're doing a senior movie night, a couple different senior movie nights. They're doing the county line at the lake, Wonder Spaces, and then they're going to the George Bush Presidential Library as well. So they are getting out and about. The floor is complete. It seems like so far everyone's been very pleased. We also, anyone that was on the board or the commission this summer knew that at one of the hottest stretches of the summer, our air conditioning went out, 22 years old. And the city staff, facility staff had done everything they could to keep it going as long as possible. And those aren't something you can buy at Home Depot and just pick off the shelf. So we had to order, and it just got in last week. And so the air conditioning unit is installed, and the gym floor is installed. So it's a 23-year-old facility this year, but it's operating like it's brand new. So we're excited about it. Other updates, we did a lunch and learn with council towards the end of last month where we talked about the Slice of Pflugerville event. It's our cultural festival that we're working on right now. And the trail campaign, we'll bring both of those to you. We'll give you an update next month on some of that. But through the master plan process, we're starting to see that our trails compare very, very favorably to any trails of our benchmark cities and even some of the larger DFW cities that are known for their trails and just quality of life, as well as the large cities in the state. And so we're looking to highlight that in some way. We hosted a PF 101 for anyone that's done that. It's a great program. We had them here last Thursday, and it was a great group. I think we had 18 people here, gave them all shirts. We bribed them, basically. It was a good group. We spoke at the Equity Commission Monday and talked about the Slice of Pflugerville event, which is that cultural festival, and just trying to get a little bit of buy-in from the Equity Commission. Went to council Tuesday night to get the surge tank approved. So Gillen Creek was, the engineering side of this was done off of 2016 CO bond to redo the pumps and the deck. You can even see where the new concrete came in, and the new pool system and the new pumps. And it wasn't engineered to have a surge tank. It's got surge weirs, which is an engineering tool that is used to control water levels. And when you overflow that surge, where you go into the gutter filter system, the skimmer system, and it was really meant to hold that dust and stuff that kind of accumulates on anybody's residential pool. And we get all of that for sure, because all of the kids that come in and out, we definitely get a lot of dust on the surface of our pools. But we also, because of the breeze and some of the being next to an outdoor park and a creek, we get leaves and sticks and other things. And if you have ever cleaned a pool even completely still, it's not the easiest thing to do. If you've got 500 kids swimming in there, it's a tough thing to catch all those. And so the weir system dumps into the filter, and that's supposed to go down line. Well, some of those debris were getting caught, and it was causing air pockets, and that air is really tough downstream in a pump system. And so this surge tank is going to flush the line with water when it senses those pockets of air. We had already spent about $30,000 since 2018 on small repairs where pops in the line where they would vibrate because the air was coming through, or there was impact to the motor or the pump. And so once went to council, part of our aquatic audit from our master plan said we needed a surge tank, which some staff had seen over the years, and that reinforced it. So, and we wanted to do it while we're doing all the other Gillian Creek improvements, because to do a surge tank, you have to completely drain the pool. And we didn't want to get this pool up and introduce it to the public in the summer and then have to drain it to do a surge tank. So working with CIP's been great. Desmond here is from CIP. If y'all haven't got to meet him, Desmond's our park project manager with CIP. And they've been great to take on a full project that's already at like 75% completion and let us find out quickly that we had a surge tank need. We had a surge tank opportunity in the budget. Ultimately, what we've done 3 park projects, 3 playground replacements a year in the budget last couple of years. Well, we've done that so efficiently that we've gotten 8 in the last 2 years. So we're ahead of that schedule. So one of the park playground replacements we're going to use this year, instead of doing it on a playground, we're going to do it on the surge tank because it was unfunded. And ultimately, we'll still be ahead. You know, when October kicks back around, we'll get to our 3 more playground replacements as well. So surge tank's coming in. And then the other thing to give y'all update wise, the next meeting falls during spring break. And normally every year that's happened, we've just bumped it back a week. So we're going to bump that to March 23rd. We're fortunate this March is a 5 Thursday month anyway, so it won't impact April. We won't feel like we're butting into April. We'll still have 4 meetings before we get to our April meeting. So next month's meeting in March will not be during spring break. For anyone that has kids or would have been affected by that, it'll be the following week. Cummings, Eduardo Flores is coming to us he had worked for ABC Home and Commercial for 3 years and Pflugerville ISD for 5. He seems very happy. That must be his first day. I don't know if we have a photo of that.
He hasn't met you yet.
Yeah, we haven't actually met. That's probably why. And he worked for Pflugerville ISD for 5 on the fields and enjoys mixed martial arts and watching movies. I actually have got to meet him for a little bit. He's a great guy, and he's still smiling like that, so hopefully that stays. And then, you know, it has been 0 days since our last nonsense, but we still haven't lost anybody. So that's 2 months straight now that we have had someone coming on and no one leaving, so we feel very fortunate for that, for sure.
All right.
And then we've
Did
done
that one.
we get through this while you're pulling up what we got next.
Okay, 4C, discuss recommendations regarding the Parks and Recreation 5-year capital improvement program.
So Kelsey, our new assistant director, is here to talk about the CIP plan.
Fun stuff. And Desmond is here, so he can answer any hard questions. Just
If
kidding,
you
Desmond.
do answer, you gotta speak in one.
And Shane will drive, but we wanted to give you a high-level overview of all the projects that we are proposing or recommending to you all for consideration for the next 5 years. Next slide. So we'll go over all of the different projects, and then at the end, we'll look at what the next 5 years looks like. It's really important to mention that our master plan is currently being revised for the next 10 years, and so unfortunately, it's not completed yet. And so we don't have that to base the next 5 years off of yet, but that'll be coming in the near future. And once we have that and you all have looked at it and approved it and it's been approved by council, we'll reevaluate and add those into the CIP next year.
And I'll
So-
say before, I know I stood last year and said we were gonna try to get the master plan done in the time frame where we could use it for this year. So that was initially the goal. And, we enjoyed and worked so hard on the public engagement process. So public engagement was supposed to be like a 3 or 4 month progress, and y'all saw what we did with the trailer and all the cameos and all the different events that we set up around public engagement. So our public engagement almost went 8 months, and so it really kind of kicked the rest of the plan off. It kind of delayed it a little bit, but from that public engagement, and we'll see when we give the master plan report. But we had almost 30,000 touch points
Yeah.
for a town of 75,000. It's like the master plan
Remarkable.
folks are like blown away with how much people were able to interact with this process. So hopefully it was worth it that we're a little delayed. And we did get a preliminary report, but yeah.
And so what's really cool is all the projects that'll come forward will be from the citizens moving forward, and these two. But so the first one is the historic water tank and Old Town Park project. So this is the historic water tank that's in downtown Louisville. It was constructed in the 30s. It's currently being rehabilitated. So we would like to beautify the property. It's adjacent to Old Town Park. So we'd like to create a gathering place and incorporate the educational and historical value of that site. Next, we have the Wells Point Park improvements, Phase 2. This would include replacement of all of the fencing, as well as upgrading the existing restroom and concession facilities to the well-used park. Up next is Lake Pflugerville Park Phase 2A, and these are not in any order. So just so you know, they're not prioritized. Lake Pflugerville Park Phase 2A was a 2020 bond project. This would incorporate the development of the north side of the lake, so expanding the beach, adding additional restrooms and walkways, and the introduction of a splash pad and or additional play components there at that north side. We recently just completed the additional parking spots up there, so this would be the beach expansion. Lake Pflugerville Park Phase 2B would be the redesign of the Beely House property. That would incorporate the community garden, demonstration gardens, the greenhouse, additional parking, and this also was funded through the 2020 bond project. And both of these, Phase 2A and 2B, we broke out because they are so large, but they were identified in the 2019 preliminary design report that was put together. Next up is the Destination Play Space. This was also a 2020 bond project. The idea would be to create a destination playground at a yet-to-be-determined location. And then we have, again, from the preliminary design of Lake Pflugerville, the trailhead. This is on Silent Harbor Loop. It would add about, I think it's 40 parking spaces, a restroom facility, and then additional trail connections. And this would be just above the Beely property. So it's in between the neighborhoods on a parcel that's just, a blank canvas right now. And then we have the Lake Pflugerville Boardwalk and pier replacement. This is really cool. It would be a boardwalk network that would incorporate the wetlands that are already existing there. And then we would look to replace the existing piers in the park with that same type of material that is not wood, but that would work well in those wetlands. And then we have 1849 Park Phase 3. So we're currently working on Phase 2. This is also not funded, but this would activate the T portion of the park. So more of the passive recreation. So the majority of the front end of the park is sports fields. So this would be more recreational, would include pickleball courts, a 5-acre dog park, we talked about earlier, additional parking, wildflower and prairie preserves, and then I think it's a festival area and then amphitheater.
This board has identified in the past both pickleball, tennis courts as something we put on one of our CIPs in the past, as well as a destination dog park. And we really feel like of Phase 3, Phase 3A could be this side, this western side of Melbourne Lane, where you can see the dog park. I'm sorry this doesn't show any better, but if we'd have pulled it any more, it would really pixelize. So this is the dog park. This is the parking lot. This is sand volleyball courts, and this would be pickleball tennis courts. And this is Carmel, the backside of Carmel, the backside of Weiss High School, and actually the new junior high and the new elementary school and the fire station, all that over there.
Will
So
this include trail connectivity to those?
yeah. So some of the neighborhoods are bringing this. If you see this trail meandering through here, so obviously this land isn't our land. So as this land is sold to developers, and this was actually recently discussed, I think at this last council meeting as well. Cameron I-6, which is the one before this one going further west, y'all actually had come before y'all 6 or 8 months ago. And so you're starting to see development happening, and as that happens, those trail connectivities will come as well. We'll continue to require those as development happens.
And this was a part of the 2016 master plan from 1849. Then we have the master plan. We do have to update this every 5 years, so we wanted to go ahead and incorporate funding for that so that we can keep that up to date. And our annual trail outlay, speaking of trails, this was something that CIP has put in and will continue to put in for the next 5 years funding, so that we can continue to work on ADA compliance through our unpaved and paved trails, as well as fill the gap program, so filling in the gaps between developments as they come in. And then this is how we have prioritized the projects, again, not having the information from the master plan just yet. So everything in green at the bottom is that trail outlay that you'll see consistently through the next 5 slides. But at the top, we have the design funding for the water tank, as well as design for the destination play space at the yet-to-be-determined location, Lake Pflugerville Phase 2A design, and then the Wells Point Park improvements, full funding for that project for 2024. 2025, we have continued feasibility design for the historic water tank, the destination play space construction, Lake Pflugerville Phase 2A construction, Wells Point Park improvements closeout, so finishing anything that wasn't completed in '24, and then Lake Pflugerville Phase 2B design, the Beeley property, and again, the trails. 2026 would be closeout of the play space, Lake Pflugerville 2A closeout, and then Lake Pflugerville Phase 2B construction, and then Lake Pflugerville trailhead design. And then 27, these are a lot of numbers. 1849 Park Phase 3 would be preliminary design, and then the trailhead construction, Lake Pflugerville boardwalk design. So it's kind of everything is just staggered in. And then in 28, additional design of 1849 Park Phase 3, the master plan update that we talked about, because that would be 5 years, so we'd need to do that update. The Lake Pflugerville trailhead closeout, and then the boardwalk construction.
And this comes to y'all twice. It comes from a staff recommendation. It's just us working on where we think, all these fit in and just bandwidth of what we're taking on and what would ultimately be approved. And then we can PDF this to y'all. You have the month to look at it, and then y'all will come back and y'all will give y'all's recommendation to planning and zoning on, we want this here, we want this here, and Lisa will guide you through that as well. So today is discuss only, great opportunity to ask questions, go back, think about it, and then next time we'll be coming to you for your recommendation. Yes, sir.
Newbie question. Is all this already funded with existing bonds?
Some of it's funded, some of it is unfunded. Yeah, we get them on,
So
so,
we would have to vote more bonds for some of this?
well, no, not necessarily. So perfect example of that
So
is.
maybe my use of the word funded is not
No,
accurate.
no,
so-
you were right. You put it on CIP, you put it on the CIP 5-year.
Right.
And if it goes into the budgetary process, if y'all recommend, okay, so if y'all recommend this, y'all say this is great, we should have totaled this up. It looks like it's under $2 million, right? Am I doing that right in the head? Something like that? So it's under $2 million. That goes into our budget request and it goes to council.
Okay.
And maybe council approves it, and then we have this CIP for next year. And they know y'all's request for the next 5 years. They can start to plan for it. Finance can start to plan for it. But in that process, so last year, we put the parking lot and the lights on, and the American Recovery Act funds were available, and so y'all are using the American Recovery Act funds for the parking lot and lights at 1849. So
Okay.
the citizens aren't gonna be paying any taxes on that project. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah,
coming
right,
out of a
okay.
different funding source.
Okay, so how it gets funded is completely
And then there may
separate
be something
discussion
that
from what we're
elevates
looking at
to a
tonight.
point
Got
that
it,
you
okay.
do have to bond.
Right.
Right.
Okay, got it.
So
Okay.
council may be like, 2 million, we can put that on the parks funding, we can put that in the Parks General Fund next year, but if it's 13 million, they may be like, no, that's gonna have to be something that kicks back to a bond. And if transportation has 30 million, if parks has 13 and someone else has, library has 15 or whatever, then maybe council says, okay, it looks like there's enough of a need that maybe we go back and they would bring up another bond council and citizens would discuss all those things, and if they're interested, they'd make a recommendation to the council to go to a bond.
Okay.
I have a question. For the playground, the destination playground, has there been any thought or consideration of making it a play for all, like an ADA playground?
Yes, yeah, it would be,
Okay.
we.
That's exciting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that
That's
would be
really
the
awesome.
plan, is it would be a play for all.
Yeah. There's not
And-
very many of them. I think
Do
the only
we-
one's in
do-
Round Rock.
Do we,
Yes.
do
Yeah.
we don't have one yet?
No, we've got some ADA pieces
Fun,
in,
yeah.
I was trying to
in
think.
our parks.
Okay, yeah.
And we're very proud of those pieces. We added, Geneva's got one that, it seems to be pretty popular so far as well, but, a full ADA accessible park is something that doesn't, you don't accidentally do it. You know, there's a lot of effort in making sure that everything, is accessible to all, and that's not just someone that maybe physically can't get to something, but then all the other, impairments as well. So, we're excited about destination play space that would be an all abilities type opportunity,
That's
or,
awesome.
or even 75 or 80%, something that would
Yeah.
really serve almost completely
Yeah.
in that capacity. So, and we've talked about it site agnostic right now. There's been some discussion, and we'll see a future trail master plan soon, because our trail master plan is growing to its 10-year. And we know that trail campaign that I mentioned earlier may be there may be a lot of great inertia there to say we're gonna have a new 10-year trail master campaign with our new trail campaign program, and, you know, we're gonna project what our trails are gonna look like using the corridor study and the parks master plan as supportive for our next 10 years, knowing what our trails are gonna look like. And in that, there's been the opportunity, so if you think of the corridor of the current rec center, the potential new rec center, the national outdoor fitness spot that we're hoping to finalize soon, and then Gilling Creek Pool, there's a lot of great infrastructure right along that trail and creek system. And so maybe there's a park or a green space that sees the destination play there, you know, so kids can go at a swim meet or a swim class or life, you know, they could do, you know, something, whether it's at Gilling Creek or at the rec center, and then they can walk down to that destination play space. Or, you know, someone could get married at the rec center or have some sort of anniversary at the rec center, and everyone goes down afterwards at the destination play space. So doing something like that along that trail makes a lot of sense for us, whether we reimagine what Bowles looks like for the community, or maybe Finnig on the other side, or we find a different green space somewhere, and work to add that destination play space in there.
What's gonna make our water tank cooler than Round Rock's water tank?
Well, me and the utilities director have just talked about putting a photo of me and him up in the Step Brothers,
We're getting there.
in the Step Brothers theme.
Would you answer the question?
Yeah, water park is what we're calling it. I think it's gonna be cool because utilities is doing everything to rehab it right now, and then we're gonna get to really find a creative designer that's going to first rehab Old Town Park. And if you've been to Old Town Park, there's not a lot to be, you know, it's served its use. It's past that time, right? So it's ready for a refresh. And then right across the street will be this beautiful water tower that we could potentially put some decking, some signage, have some shade, some really cool interactive features. Maybe there's some water feature that kids can pump and they can see how water works through or something. So I think
the
there's
water
an
tank?
yeah, or a fake water tank, right? A smaller water tank. I think there's some educational component there that, you know, when dad's telling a story about how water's pumped and the kids are bored, they can run across the street and go play on an actual playground that is new and maybe even water tank themed in some capacity. And so I think it is going to be a really cool spot.
I have one more question. For the piers that are going to be at Lake Pflugerville, is the idea that those are going to be fishing piers or walking, running biking piers?
It's just a conceptual. I
conceptual.
think what we would see is probably some spots that we tried to designate as fishing spots, because we want to provide those spaces for those folks to get out. But we also want to make sure everyone else can maneuver around those, because you don't want to get hooked, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it'd be great if we could find some spot that's the fishing pier, the others are the observation or enjoyment piers.
Yeah, I just think of like the City of Austin Town Lake and
Right.
running along that. It's and every time I run at Lake Pflugerville, I always think of that. It would be so cool to be able to run on a pier here. So hearing that's really exciting. It'd be cool if there at least was one that was wide enough and a material that could lend for families walking or someone running.
To me, it makes most sense to have one that doesn't connect to the other side, right? So like you
Yeah.
have something that connects to the other side and then take one out in the middle. No runner's gonna run to that. It's just a T, right?
Yeah,
So that's where
yeah.
fishermen would want to
Fishing,
be at,
yeah.
right? So you
Oh, I
you
love
make that
that.
designated and this
And
running is
the
something.
boardwalk on,
That'd be so cool.
Lady Bird Lake has wider areas for, if you, even if you're not fishing, I don't know if anybody fishes there, but
They
if you're
do,
walking,
yeah.
you can stop and
Yeah.
be off to the side.
I'd
So,
love
yeah.
to get them in the same area but completely separate from each other.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
that would be
for safety.
that'd be
Yeah, I
cool.
can see the need for separation if you think people
But
are gonna
would
fish.
you want fishing on there because of the noise that people walking or running and the reverb would make on the water? I just remember my dad, when we would go out fishing, he'd be like, y'all be quiet. Yeah,
Be patient.
yes, don't make any noise.
They say that, but fishermen are the loudest
if
people I've
the-
ever met. They're banging on stuff all the time, and
If it's on a wooden pier, I don't think it depends on the material. I feel like if it was like a sturdy pier, running it wouldn't.
I think
reverb a
once
whole
we
lot.
get them access to the middle of the lake, they're gonna fish on it.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Because they don't have to get in a boat to do it, and they can't bank fish and get that far out. So I think they're going to be excited to fish at fish they haven't always had a chance to go after.
Maybe we can get the fish earphones.
That's right.
The one thing to add too is most of these projects would all have engagement processes or
Yeah.
pieces to them, so we could get that input as we move through those.
You also have the GPS marked Baker Reeves we put in there, so we can move those around, have them on
Yeah,
plaques, everything like that.
yeah, we could do a lot. I mean, when we do the little fishing things for the kids, we got fish attractors that we've already built. We've already put in the water. We've sank people's Christmas trees in the past and created some landscape areas where fish can have a spot to habitat, and then we chum those areas, and so fish are usually pretty hungry and they're hanging out there waiting. If we chum the right schedule, that little fish event for those kids, they can actually pull something out. I was telling someone else that there's nothing sadder than watching a kid put a hook in for hours and not pull anything out. So we try our best. We can't stock this and them all be, because the surface lake here is so huge. It's like 880 acres, and so they can just go. Any fish you put in there, they can disperse. But if we chum it for 3 weeks, by the time the fishing tournament's ready, those kids are. Chumming is like knowing that the kids are going to use bait, whether it's blood bait or corn bait, and so for 3 weeks we do it three times. And then 2 weeks out,
You
we
go
do it
here,
2
fishy,
times.
fishy, come and
And
eat some of
then
this.
Monday, we do
Position
it
the
once,
fish.
and then we don't throw anything out until Friday, and
So
those
you
fish
starve
are
them.
ready for that.
Seems a good Indian.
They're made to harvest. They've been put in there for that reason, so,
Okay, that's kind of cool.
yeah. So if there's not any questions, we'll come back next time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Item 4D, discussion replacement of porta potties at Lake Pflugerville Park.
I spoke to Mr. Trevino, Ray, who I've gotten to know really well over this. He has sourced, I believe, a little less than 100, maybe I think 70 or 75 signed people who are interested in seeing, anyone that is interested in reading the list or whatever I can provide. I don't know how he sourced those, but I completely trust his good intention, and they're all citizens. But Ray came to us a while back. He does a running program, and he's been concerned with the porta potties where they're at currently. So I'm going to take you through a couple slides, give you our mindset of where we're at. This is a discuss-only item. We're going to give you our recommendation on why it is where it is. At the end of this, if y'all want to elevate that to something more, we can, and we can have that discussion from there. So this is a screenshot of May 2022. So you can see how people are interacting with the beach area. This is the new little addition that had been built. It was built, by then it was built, and by Easter it was open to the public. Sometime around Easter weekend is when we first opened. We were at substantial completion of that restroom. This is May. We use a thing called Near Map, which gives us some satellite data, but you don't get to select the date, so this was as close as I can get to the summer. But I think it shows a pretty accurate representation of how people interact with our lake. You can definitely see that the parking lot's being used by now, and lots of folks enjoy the peninsula and the beach itself, and they bring their own pop-up tents, and we think it's great. It is one of the last spots in the Austin metro area that you don't have to book a spot. You don't have to be a resident or, a member of some club. You can, if you want to get beach access, we provide that opportunity. And so it's very popular in peak season. Next, you will see, this was something January of this year, so obviously we're not in peak season. We're not going to see a lot of people in January out there. But I pulled this up because you can see where the porta potties are currently. Porta potties are here in a temporary basis. These are not permanent porta potties. You can see we have no desire to have porta potties out there year round. We pull them up for peak times or when restrooms go down for some reason. I think CIP would admit that we're having restroom issues with the consultants there, and they've been working with them. You can also see RP, and you can also see where RP comes up a lot. You can see these little knuckleheads are doing their little wheelies out here on RP as well. But this is the extension, and I know y'all are conduits to the community, so someone's going to say, you're on the Parks and Rec Commission, why'd you let them just build 2 restrooms for the whole lake? That's crazy. We didn't just build 2 restrooms for the whole lake. If you go back and think of Kelsey's slide, I can just pull it up real quick. So the beach expansion, so the beach right now kind of dies right around here. So all of this is the beach expansion, and none of this is there right now. That hardscape with multiple restrooms and playgrounds and concession stands and all the great things that you would think a fully functioning boardwalk/beach amenity would have is not there yet. That's coming, right? And in that is restrooms to aid that amenity. These restrooms here were part of that plan just to aid essentially the rental of the pavilion and just some of the light day use. So we did not build 2 restrooms for peak season use, right? We expanded these restrooms for this use here. And as this property grows, and as you see this area here all become a hardscape with a lot of fun activities for the community, there's going to be restrooms out here as well. But we have porta potties right now because these restrooms aren't completely 100% reliable, and the city is working with the contractor to get that fixed. Also, what you can see is they are put in line where, when I show you the next slide, you can see that they're not in anybody's viewpoint. You can also see that the contractor drives in and stays on hardscape. He's got a really big truck. The dirty issue of porta potties is they have to be cleaned and they have to be emptied. And that is a thing, that's a maintenance issue. And so if we're having them travel the trail on one of these big old trucks, first of all, more people are having to avoid this huge vehicle. And second, at some point they're off concrete and they're into DG. And that just breaks down the DG because we've built it up, we've pressed it, and it's as hard as it can be in that spot. And it's soft for those runners, and everyone loves walking and running on DG, but if I drive a huge truck on it 3 days a week, it's just going to dissipate all that.
Decomposed granite.
Decomposed granite. And it's not actually granite, so I don't know why they call it that, but DG is decomposed granite, and that's one of our 2 trail it's one of our 2 types of trails. You're either going to have concrete trails or you're going to have DG trails. And most of the lake is DG except for areas where there's drainage, or like right here, there's a culvert coming from that neighborhood. So that's concrete in that little section so the water can get underneath, right? And so most of the trail at the lake is DG except for areas where, because of some utility, it needed concrete to reinforce. So we only have concrete right here. Another thing I want you to see is you see how this is lighter. So that is the highest ground of this water. You can see we have some low spots. All that will be
Very swampy.
Yeah, it does. It does get very swampy out there. And part of phase 2 will have to address that and obviously build up some areas, and they'll have to work on where that sheet flows and everything else happens. But this area, this area that's higher is where the water's running off. And so if we go further down the line, we're off the concrete. If we go further down the line, we're on something where elevation isn't, it's starting to dip, elevation's starting to change. And so now I've got, you know, a truck coming in further down the line, maybe in a wet, swampy area where maybe the trail's now a little bit wetter. And, you know, they're doing a dirty job already, trying to clean it up and get back out and be least impactful as possible. So I showed all that, show you a bigger picture. So if I can, this is where those portables are in this scope. So we could put them right here. We could put them on the back of the property, but these homes would see them. And to be quite honest, if you pulled them right now, they're not in love with seeing those restrooms. So they're sure as heck not going to love seeing another 6 porta potties out here as well. And so the idea was not to put them there. And Ray, if Ray was here, and if Ray's here next time, I'm sure he would talk about how he would like these porta potties potentially in the parking lot. And the parking lot would be much easier for our guys to clean up, much easier for the contract company to empty out. But the mom of the 2-year-old would not enjoy that so much.
That's what the lake's for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, maybe that's why it's a little bit browner here. So, yeah, maybe we haven't done our porta potty placement very well.
You don't want everything in the lake.
Right, yeah. That's y'all's water source. Yeah. So,
Reservoir.
yeah. So, in some ways, it's tough to move it anywhere else, right? First of all, anywhere downline this way is in front of someone's home. That's now their view for as long as the restroom issue is an issue. And I will say, we would love to be porta potty free out here. It costs money every time. It's a dirtier facility, but because of the usage and right now, because we don't have restrooms that can accommodate the full use of that park, we do put porta potties out usually during peak season. So there will be times of the year there's porta potties out there, and this is where we have felt is the best place.
Sorry, I'm gonna miss it. Is there, as part of the petition, a proposal that it's regarding the placement of the porta potty? Is there suggested a new place, or why they don't like where it is now?
I think, talking to Ray, he doesn't like where it is now, Mr. Trevino, because it's where everything else is happening.
Yeah, it's a pretty crowded area.
It's where, you've got a playground here, you've got a pavilion here. But these get cleaned 3 times a week. And then our guys are checking them every day. So if there's a day that the contract's not cleaning them and there's an issue, our guys can blow them out or take care of them or do what we need to do to make sure they're as clean as possible for the rest of that day use. And so, they're porta potties. So by nature, there are things there. But I have never had a lot of complaints about these porta potties or the placement of these porta potties before this came up. So it's there because aesthetically we think it's the best spot for anyone that lives along the line. It is utility wise, it's the best way for our staff. Let's see if I have a closer photo. So yeah, you can already see that the gentleman comes off the trail a little bit when he's doing the vending because I don't want him blocking the full trail the whole time. So he comes in and cleans it and comes back out and leaves, but stays mostly on the trail here. And I wouldn't want him to get in the swampy section if we went further. If we didn't have him on the DG and I don't know where else we would send them, to be quite honest. If we're not sending them along the DG path, you'd almost have to send them completely around this low little section here. And then once again, you're pretty far away from anybody that would use that porta potties and the need that they have for them. So staff's recommendation is for them to stay. We're hoping that eventually the restrooms get fixed. And like I said, CIP is working really hard to get those up and running. In fact, some people were out there, I think, yesterday and today working on them. Right now, you could potentially see those in peak season, non-peak season. We would like to not have them there. We'd like to not have as many there either way. Right now, they're there because ADA, it's the flattest spot that we have. It's off the concrete. It's a utility spot, and it's not blocking anybody's view. And it serves the beach, and it serves the pavilions, and it serves the area.
That's right, one of them's accessible.
Yeah, actually 2.
2 of them.
So this is discussed, so you definitely have the opportunity to discuss. If you want to get down the nitty gritty, Junior can tell you all the dirty stuff that you'd like.
So can you go to where it shows the parking lot again? So you said Mr. Trevino likes the idea of having it further down there?
So I can't speak to exactly where he'd like, because we haven't just laid out a map and talked. He has said to me that he believes there's other places that you can put them where you're not right where they're at right now. And one of them is in the parking lot. And I mentioned in that scenario, that would be a longer way for, a mom or a dad to try to get their babies out to the spot. And, yeah, I don't know if that was as big of a concern.
So, remind me, what is his objection? That they're there?
I think
they're
it- I
kind of an
think-
Smelly,
eyesore?
they're
No,
crowded,
it was
it's crowded.
smelly, like when the wind hit it, it
okay.
smelled is, I think, what his, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
I don't talk to every person that rents our facility. We don't hear a lot of that. I will tell you that Mr. Trevino's got a running club that runs in this path. He's working on creating a running club. And so I know that it probably does impact his group or will impact his group more than it potentially does the lake people that are, the lake goers that are farther away, and maybe even the pavilion folks that are farther away.
And that little area right there gets very crowded.
Yep.
What about that strip of gravel between the parking lot and the, whoops, it's not shown here.
Oh, sorry, I
And
thought
the-
I could help.
There, between the parking lot and the circle.
This?
No, on the up,
The
nope,
white
nope,
part,
to
I
the
think is
right.
what he's talking- up-
Oh my
up
gosh,
there,
this?
that-
Yes.
Um,
That's old trail that's just been
Yeah,
left there.
it's an old trail. I think if the restroom isn't working, once again, if the restroom's working, I don't think we'd prefer not to have any portables up there for the most part.
So was that just left there just because?
Well, the restrooms aren't completely working right now.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm
that
sorry.
strip
Oh,
of-
the trail?
That strip of gravel there, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's easier to leave it than it was to remove it
Okay.
in some capacity. I'd have to look it up why it's still there, but you probably could put it on that spot, but you'd be farther away from.
Right.
Yeah, parents would be picking kids up
Yeah,
and running
It's
them.
just been always kind of
Yeah.
odd that with all the improvements that have been done, that was just left there.
And honestly, if vandalism's gonna happen, I think you want it closer where other people are instead of further away. You
Okay.
know, because someone would be like, hey, stop messing around over there versus it being kind of off. I don't know.
What type of response do we have to formulate to this? I mean, it sounds like this is already a temporary solution, and we can agree that neither of us would like the porta potties to be there if the restrooms work, and in fact, we're making more restroom expansions.
Speaking to Mr. Trevino today, he said basically he's got a petition. He's got, I think, about 75, maybe a little bit more names of people that he's talked to that signed it. But he's fine with this board's decision. If this board doesn't take action, goes with this staff's recommendation, he's fine with that. We don't have to draw anything up formal. I don't think he's trying to. We have a great relationship with Mr. Trevino. He was in PF 101. Once again, we're working with him. We've allowed the running program to happen there. There's not an adversarial relationship. We categorically disagree on where he and I think we should place these restrooms, but I have a lot of respect for him, and I think he'd say the same about me. So we're not having to do a full-page report, and we're not having to send it to council or anything else. He said he was fine with whatever this board was fine with, but
But this is a discuss only.
it's discuss only. If no one recommends it for discuss and consider, I will just assume that this staff's, or you're fine with staff's recommendation.
Okay.
Well, I run out there pretty often, and I've never experienced, honestly, the portable situation that has been, not frustrating, but more frustrating is that the two sets of portables are so close to each other. So if you're on the opposite side of the lake, you don't really have access to portables until you get all the way down, and that to me is something that I feel like has been more impactful as someone who runs on the lake than I've never noticed smell or congestion there or anything like that.
Once again, I think Mr. Trevino's club pools in those areas, right? They run to a spot, they stop, they're talking, they run back to a spot, so they're standing there more.
Oh, okay,
You know?
yeah.
I think, yeah, if I was running by a porta potty, it'd be the one thing that would make me run faster. The one
Me
thing,
too.
yeah.
Yeah, if anything, it
Have we
helps to
suggested
see.
he runs faster?
That's what it is. I'm so fast, I just can't
There you
smell
go.
it. Yeah.
We know that, anywhere we put the portables, first of all, we gotta maintain them, we gotta get access to them. But the more of them we put out there and the farther, so we have thought about maybe putting them across from Beagley House, but we do feel they're the most acceptable to damage and kids flipping them or messing with them in that spot, because they're the farthest away from homes. And there's no home there, like people are just driving by, and so.
Oh, moving the other ones
Yeah,
across?
because
Okay.
you have the ones on
Yeah,
the
yeah,
south
yeah.
side where people park, and so people will be like, stop messing around, kids, but there's a very small parking lot over there. And so, Kelsey was telling us she had interviewed for the AD job, and then she was walking the trail just to check, and she had at one point was like, "Wow, you got to go a long way before you see your next restroom." You know,
Yeah.
it's another tool.
Makes you go a little faster.
It makes you go faster. People are breaking records at our lake. We could look into potential porta potties over there, trying to find a spot we felt comfortable with, but it would. We would once again have to figure out placement and people's view and sight lines and utility of getting to it and ADA spots, and there'd be a couple things
Well,
we'd
it
work on.
sounds to me like staff has a good handle on what
Awesome.
needs to be done.
Appreciate it. You ready to go to the next thing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. No other questions. Thank y'all.
Okay, 4E, discussion regarding subcommittee updates.
So this board has several subcommittees for our newer folks. Subcommittees is a utility or tool that boards and commissions are allowed to use that allows them to work efficiently outside of the office. So if you remember from your training, hopefully everyone's up to date on their training. I had to take mine again as well. But we are all not supposed to email and talk to each other outside the office on all board email, right? Every communication you have past quorum is supposed to be done in a way that the public can see the discussions and interactions as well. So having a small, leaner committee of 2 or 3 people, usually it's 2, that can work on something on behalf of the group and then come back and report on the group without the whole group having to be involved in every discussion or conversation, allows that group to work a little bit more efficiency, allows them to work together and for example, tree board initiatives will work on park foundation things without us having to call a public meeting every time you are ready to discuss something as a group. So council and other boards have used them for a while. Y'all were interested in using one. Before the September meeting is when we discussed it. We brought it to the board at the September meeting to finalize at that time. We did a tree board and we actually had 3. Scott's no longer a member, so Scott's not actively involved. I'm sure y'all talk to Scott still. He's a tree advocate for sure. But we have a tree board that works on initiatives. We have a subcommittee tree board initiative group, and then we have a group that we really just founded, and that's the Parks Foundation. And so just for the newer members, we wanted to give an update, just if there was one, and let people know that it was there. And normally those run for a year, so unless y'all decide to make a change, these 2 committee members will be on these 2 boards for another 8 months and 10 months, or 9 months. And so I just want to give them a chance to get an update, and if you wanted to create a new board for one or a new subcommittee at one point or another for another reason, just want you to know that that tool or that utility was there. So the first one would be the tree board, if y'all had an update.
So basically we had one major project that we did with the tree board subcommittee last year, and that was planting trees on school campuses. And we had 16 schools participate, and we planted, I think, just a little under 80 trees. Well, Junior and his crew planted a little under 80 trees. But it was super successful, and it was awesome, and the schools were really excited about it, and we were really excited. So I think we definitely want to try to do that again. So if that all gets approved, we'll probably start around August contacting schools and stuff again for that. And then outside of that, we have talked a little bit about recommending more places around the city to plant trees. So that's something we're talking about now. And then for the Parks Foundation, do you want to give an update, or you want me to?
Yes, we reached out to Austin Parks Foundation and have been playing hopscotch with the gentleman on that board about getting together. So that's in the works. I've also reached out to 2 people I know who are on the Pflugerville Education Foundation, and I didn't get a chance to tell you, but they said they would also tell us how they went through the process, because it would be very similar for us.
Yeah.
But we'd be dealing with a city council and not a school district, but similar. And so it's very much I'm not even sure it's conceptual at this point. It's more kind of out in the ether, but
We're getting there.
we're getting there. We know we're going that
We're working
direction,
towards
so. And I know that on there you say 2 members, I certainly think 3 members would be great if anybody's super interested in.
Yeah. So there's nothing that I've seen that doesn't allow 3 members. Our council sticks to 2, I think because they're all on 1 or 2 boards. So I think maybe it's just they're not overburdened
they
because
can
there's
do
facilities
once
committees and
more,
events
yeah.
committees and a bunch of other committees I don't even know about. But as long as you're not a quorum,
Right.
you're not violating the reasons that we were concerned earlier. So having these committees is a way for y'all to meet and doggedly work on something without having to announce it every time. And so then you can provide updates and keep people in the loop, but you can work at a faster speed on some of this stuff.
What's the goal of the Parks Foundation?
To set up a foundation that can raise money outside of the money that comes through the city for special projects.
Okay. Oh, and that's why you're reaching out to other foundations to see how they
Right.
went through that
Yeah.
process. I see. Okay.
A 501c3.
And we
Oh,
could
okay.
probably do a refresher presentation at some point, but
Yep.
we had a discussion about it, and we reached out to some folks that had provided some advice, and really, you're either gonna be a foundation that's a fundraising foundation, and you're hosting galas and bake sales and things, cause you're community focused and you're bringing in smaller donations, or you're one that's focused on maybe like being a larger donor, like you're reaching out to the Lady Bird Foundation, like, there's a difference in.
And go after grants.
Right, yeah, yeah, and you can be one of 2 ways. I think it's tough in some of those markets to compete in both, because if you're swimming in that pond or whatever, you're competing against a higher. Usually those folks have higher because they've received larger grants. Sometimes they even receive land that they're holding, and so when one of those high foundations, one of those groups that is donating money, they see this group's got 30 acres of land and $30 million, and this group has fundraised $30,000. They're funding some of these bigger projects. So, but we had gotten the advice we had heard that we presented a couple months back was you kind of decide what you want to be, and then you focus on that. But either one of those takes a lot of effort. Ultimately, we're going to be working with council and legal and maybe even budgeting a startup for the first couple of years, like $10,000 for lawyer fees or admin costs for the first couple of years or whatever until we get it up and running. So it's going to be a commitment beyond this room, but we're just trying to figure out what our recommendation is going to be.
So for like a concrete example of a project like 685 improvements, we would be able to unilaterally from the Parks Foundation decide to like put in a monorail from the commission,
They
right?
could go
Opposed
after
to going
that.
through the city, yeah.
They could go after that funding source and work
Yeah.
with the city on implementation of that, yeah.
So-
And it's essentially a fundraising arm. Yeah, so y'all would still, this commission would still be the group that hears Parkland Education and where are we putting our next porta potty? Y'all would be the body that hears those types of citizen concerns and park improvements, and that group would be solely focused on fundraising efforts for the difference in a CIP. We really like that dog park, but you've got it on your blank. If we were able to raise 13 million, would you put it on your blank? And we say, absolutely. If we had the money, we'd do it right now. Cool. We're able to raise $13 million and that dog park happened 3 years earlier or whatever it is.
I'm all for that.
There you go. Deep pockets.
We need a dog park subcommittee.
There you go, yeah.
Oh, easily, yeah. That's all we need.
Potentially as a compliment on the tree board stuff in the Arboretum,
Yeah.
are y'all keeping track of what types of trees specifically we've been losing? I know we've been doing the sort of going to manage trees, right? Once we have registered and we know where they are and everything. And thinking about from a tree board perspective, should we be partnering there to see how we can do replenishment or things like that?
So we've lost a lot of trash trees, which isn't always a bad thing, what we would call trash trees, but we've lost some historically strong oaks and other trees, not because they weren't healthy, but because they were so dadgum tall. They had actually grown. Some of our older stuff we lost too. Junior, do you want to talk a little about it?
Yeah, so we to answer the question, we haven't done an extensive dive in into what type of
Yeah.
trees and all that we've suffered. But right now, live oaks were the ones that took the biggest beating because obviously they had leaves on them,
Yeah.
and the leaf was an attractor
Heavy, yeah.
for the ice. and weighted down more. So that species of tree right now.
But the younger stuff made it, the good trees, the younger stuff held up a little better than the older stuff.
Yeah, for example, I mean, we,
'Cause they had that
week
huge
before
canopy
we
died down.
replanted a tree for,
Lisa?
Lisa, yeah, sorry. And
Okay.
it was great, right? Because it was a smaller, not super mature tree.
Because it wasn't really that cold.
Yeah.
You know,
But
it
it
was
was the
really
ice.
just
It
the
was the
accumulation.
Yeah, it was the
yeah.
ice, yeah, so.
No, that's awesome here. So, yeah, is live oak one of the varieties that we get
Oh,
from the
yes,
tree program?
yeah,
Great.
yeah.
And then, do we have any sort of, like, people individually lost a ton of trees to open it up and say, Pflugervillians, like, contact us to get a tree
I
if
think
you'd like to plant
if we
one.
were able to source 1,000 trees or 500 trees donated, you know, we'll get 150 trees from Scenic City USA or Texas Scenic Cities Division or whatever. We normally try to put those in the park system, but if we couldn't put them on the park system, we have in the past handed them out at farmers markets and other ways to get these trees out. And so if you can't improve the park system with the tree, let's get it at least in our tree canopy still.
Yep.
So overall, the city is still benefiting because it's in our city limits.
If we're interested in joining the committee, do we have to say it here, or can we talk to people after the meeting?
You could talk to them, find out more, but we'd have to elect you.
I see. Okay.
So we'd have to,
We can put it on the
yep,
next.
we could do one election, I think, for both. I would make some sense, or if you wanted to create another committee, you'd have to, any of that would take an election. Any other questions on this one?
Okay, 5A, discuss and consider action to designate, well, now vice chair, since I got ramroded. Who would like to be nominated for vice chair, nominate somebody for vice chair? Second in command?
Yeah, you don't have Scott to kick around anymore.
I
do you?
know.
What exactly does the vice chair do?
Just run the meeting if the chair's not here. That's their only job.
Okay. I can
Sounds
do
like
that.
interest. I nominate
That's
Amy.
easy.
Second.
See, you got ramroded too.
Yeah, I know. I knew as soon as I spoke.
All right, we have a nomination and a second. Any discussion?
Jennifer, second was Mike Wilkie.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, congratulations.
Congrats, buddy.
Okay, discuss and consider the appointment of one member of the Parks and Rec Commission to serve as chair to the Deutschenfest Committee.
So this one,
Do it.
Deutschenfest was a citizen-led initiative for a long time, even before the Parks Department existed. And as it grew, it started to resource other city resources, probably police and fire first, and then maybe communications. Ultimately, Parks got involved as well. And at some point, it became so big that it made the most sense for council to appoint a subcommittee. So there is a citizen-led subcommittee of residents, and the chair of that comes from our board. So Amy did that last year, Raul did that the year before. I don't know if you want to talk about, I think it'd probably be good for them to all know
Yeah.
kind of what that does.
Yeah, so basically, if everybody, if like all the spots are filled and all that kind of stuff, then basically you just be like doing what Lisa does at these meetings, you're just doing that for those meetings. And then, so you're there for the meetings, for planning and stuff, but the citizens who are on the subcommittee are the ones that are trying to find vendors and stuff like that, and you can help if you want. They never.
We have an entertainment committee,
Yeah,
we have a gate committee,
entertainment, food. You have the children's part, you
Yeah.
have the fun run aspect of it, you have, and then the vendors at the fun run, and yeah, so, you'll also be working with Caitlin, or at least that's.
Yeah.
And she's great and had everything, did a great job last
Yeah,
year.
you do get to work hand
coordinating.
in hand with staff, and it's
Yeah.
a lot of hours. I guess it's
Yeah.
probably pretty easy at the first part. I mean, well, I think we'll
Yeah,
start
no,
meetings
like
for a little
overall, it wasn't. There wasn't that much. Like the week
It's a
week
tough
or
week.
two of it's a bit more crunch, but overall, it's just it. For me, it was mostly just an extra meeting once a month.
bit. Yeah. And the chair comes from this group.
Look, they all look so interesting.
Do we have anybody who would like to nominate themselves?
I have no problem doing it again.
Oh,
There we go.
anybody
that.
else?
I second her.
Don't you have to nominate her?
Well, she nominated herself. Is that not allowed?
I don't.
You can't.
I don't.
All right,
I think she can
okay.
nominate
You
herself.
nominate
I'll nominate her.
Can she not know?
second.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay.
All right, we have a nomination and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. 5C, discuss and consider action to place items on the future Parks and Recreation Commission meeting agendas. Let's add on to talk about adding committee members,
Okay, so
subcommittee members.
we've got the final recommendation that y'all will make to planning and zoning. What's this, 5C? You said you wanted well, how do you want that? Do you want,
Discuss and consider so that if somebody else wants to
both
take.
boards?
Yes.
okay, discussing.
If somebody else wants to be on one or both of those boards, they have that opportunity.
For both subcommittees?
Yes.
Okay, let me make sure I get that. Both subcommittees. Okay, so we have the final recommendation. Carol is interested in discussing the potential opportunity of what it would look like if we went from a fireworks show to a drone show at 4th of July. It is the Tree Care Advisory Board next month. I do believe we'll have a parkland dedication. I know I feel like I say that every time. I really do. I do think, I don't lie to y'all every time, but I don't know what happens to them. They sometimes get delayed, but I do believe there'll be one. And then back in September, October, we had a presentation with B-City USA, and I begged y'all to let me get some AD on board so I could kick it to them, and we have her, and she's here, and so, but she's asked to have another month, which I think we said it would be March or April, so we're still in line for potentially a presentation that Kelsey will lead on next steps of B-City USA. For those that weren't here, Austin basically went through a 4 or 5 year process and ultimately got all their chemicals and all their processes and procedures where it could be stamped of approval if it was a B-City USA. It was a city that was doing everything it needed to protect those pollinators. And we were very interested in that. Right around the same time, Sheila, our previous assistant director, and Timmy, one of our staff members, went to Keep Texas Beautiful, and Austin did a presentation at that. So she talked to the lady who works for the city of Austin. We got her on a subsequent meeting, and she spoke, and there was a lot to it. And at one point, it felt like it was me, Junior, and a roll of duct tape with this department. We're like, I don't think we can do any of this right now. So what we asked for is give us some time. Let's get to next spring and figure out what that looks like. So this subcommittee is ultimately going to be the recommendation back to this body if y'all want to see the city pursue this. And so I think it's going to take some time because there's just so many different departments and everyone uses chemicals, everyone has processes and procedures, but I think we're all intrigued by the process. So that is what that is, but we anticipate that being an April discussion. So for what y'all have for March, right now y'all have 5-year recommendation, drone show. You do have a tree care advisory board, although I do think it's pretty light. I don't know if there's a lot on it. And then making sure that we have subcommittee elections for the current 2 subcommittees we have.
Any other topics anybody would like to add?
The grounds around the rec center.
Is it like a discuss only or something? I just, what update?
I'd like an update on what the plans are for the desert behind the rec center.
This rec center here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know we had talked about putting some flowers up here before.
Yeah, when I
but-
first moved in, that was all bluebonnets every year. But bluebonnets tend to go where they want to go and not where we want them to be, so. But yeah, so the whole ground's
Just a
actually,
beautification.
yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Any other topics?
I do think eventually we're gonna have Parkland Development Manager and Forester, and I think some of that will improve as our admin grows.
I've started dropping seeds.
Your own little
so-
wildflower thing, look at you, okay.
All right.
Okay, thank y'all.
All right. Item 6, adjourn. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. And a third. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. It is 8:51.